This is music, and this is a healthy dose of first impressions. So welcome to another first impressions video in which I follow up on the many blind buys that I showed off in the two very first videos on this channel. So I've made these videos because I want to share my first impressions of blind buys. I have a tendency to buy a lot of blind buys if they're cheap enough because I like the thrill of listening to new music, and I figured that would be kind of fun to share my first impressions upon listening to these once or twice. I've been very productive this time around. I have no less than 6 CDs and 3 vinyls. So let's just, jump in the fire. Let's get to business. And start with the CDs. And by the way, I've started transferring my CDs to CD sleeves because the jewel cases take up too much space. So this one is Slaughter Command, Ride the Tornado, and this is just filthy, dirty, raw, blackened thrash metal. The production is actually not raw in that sense, but the music is this dirty, blackened thrash metal with screechy vocals, right, and considerably primitive thrashy aggressiveness, and it's good fun. I really enjoyed listening to this. It's out on Slaney Records, but it's the sort of stuff that you hear very often on or released on Hell's Headbangers, for example. The kind of music, because this did actually happen, I was listening to it in the kitchen, and my significant other just came out into the kitchen, and when she heard what I was listening to, she just said, "Oh boy," and left again. And then this is a keeper. So that's Slaughter Command, Ride the Tornado. Ride the Tornado. Just had to double check. Great fun. The next one is this one here, Abraxas, I guess, Damnation. And this one is death metal, and it's death metal that contains lots of blast beat sections, but it's not just all blast beats. They sort of are pretty good at intermixing, I guess, the blast beat sections with, for the most part, like up-tempo thrashy sections, and occasionally a mid-tempo. But this is like faster death metal with a slightly technical edge, I would say. My favorite songs are Ingrowing Masochistic Perversion. That's track 5. I really like that one. The following one actually as well, Folding for Our Demise, is pretty cool as well. There's a really nice acoustic instrumental in the form of Receptacle of Sin, and there is also a pretty cool cover version of To the Wall by Sepultura, and I found that when I listened through this one a couple of times actually, that the songs I like are the more thrashy ones for some reason. But Abraxas, Damnation, good stuff, aggressive, slightly technical, slightly brutal death metal with a number of thrashy features every now and then. It starts out with a weird, I would say, instrumental, Astaroth, which kind of like just fades out in the middle of the song. A weird way to start the album, but overall a pretty good, pretty enjoyable, for my money, death metal album. The next one is Agresiva, Eternal Foe. This is Spanish thrash metal. This is I would say, kind of standard thrash metal. Doesn't mean that it's sort of unremarkable or bad or anything. It's just like, you know, your prototypical thrash metal. And this is, I think, very good album. I would say my favorite songs are Pale Horse, Red Death. There's like a weird apostrophe in it. Helltown is great as well. The End of the Game is a great song. Sent to War and If are also great songs. Great thrash metal. It has all the sort of, I guess, like in the vein of a bit of Anthrax here, a bit of old Sepultura there, a bit of Slayer influence here, a bit of old Metallica, some Megadeth, some Forbidden, you know, that vein of thrash metal, Testament, right? So on and so forth. So very good stuff for my money. The vocals might be a bit of an acquired taste. It sounds like the singer kind of like took some cues from Jello Biafra a bit. Maybe also some inspiration from what is it? Was it Public Image Limited? I don't remember what, but Johnny Rotten after the Sex Pistols. Speaking of acquired tastes, I think the vocals on this one, Abraxas, also are an acquired taste. It sounds a bit like, it doesn't sound bad, but it sounds a bit like the Swedish Chef having joined a death metal band. And this sounds a bit more like somebody who's inspired by Jello Biafra, but I think it's good. There's a Spanish version, bonus track version of Helltown. And I think when he sings in Spanish, it sounds better with this singing style for some reason. But it's not a bad singing style. You just have to, or I had to get used to it at least. But Aggressiva, Eternal Foe, for my money, a very good, enjoyable thrash metal album. Next is Bleeding Gods, Shepherd of Souls. This is also death metal, but very thrashy death metal, I would say. Maybe Death-Thrash, maybe thrashy death metal. I don't know, but somewhere, you know, in between those genres. Very good stuff. I enjoy this one here a tad more than this one. And it might simply be because on this one there are more thrashy elements. I think that's actually just it. You do have some blast beat sections. You do have some almost like old school death metal tropes every now and then. You got some great guitar work, but you have lots of thrashy sections, which I really enjoy. So Bleeding Gods, Shepherd of Souls, another enjoyable listen. And up next is A Healthy Dose of Death by Collision. This is crossover thrash hardcore meets grindcore, and I think it's very tongue-in-cheek. It's very enjoyable, pretty short actually album with explosive short songs with some thrashy elements, some hardcore-ish riffs, and you know, some grindcore blast beats. They have fun song titles like Going Nuts with Splattered Guts, which is a pretty cool song actually. Rock Around the Chopping Block, which is also a pretty cool song. Charming Chicks with a Crucifix, and The Violence of the Lambs, right? Pretty fun listen, and actually of a surprisingly hi-fi production. Normally you would sort of expect this sort of tongue-in-cheek grindcore to sound like very primitive production-wise, but this doesn't. This has a very crisp and very polished production. Healthy Dose of Death by Collision. Fun grindcore crossover thrash. There's more Collision here. Satanic Surgery. Very similar. I would say this one is probably a bit more grindcore, and this one has a bit more crossover elements to it. But this one is also very enjoyable. They are very similar, the two albums, with that slight difference. Here you also have some pretty fun song titles. You have Piece of Shit from the Tar Pit. You have A Healthy Dose of Radiation, so more healthy doses here. You have Operation Meat Cleaver and Aggressive Assassination, among other fun song titles. So if you're interested in some slightly... Oh yeah, by the way, the production is also very hi-fi and very crisp and pristine and not at all filthy here, right? The music itself is filthy and fucked up. So if you like fucked up, crazy grindcore, but it's not too crazy, you know what I mean? With some pretty cool, I think, hardcore and crossover thrash elements, then you know, I think you would enjoy listening to Collision. I did certainly enjoy that. So CD wise, I think this was a success this time around, to be perfectly honest. I enjoyed all 6 CDs, some more than others, of course. So let's turn to the vinyls, and the first one I want to show is this one here, FM. Oops, whoa, Only the Strong Survive. Don't worry, it's not like crazy warped. I mean, there's no album in it. It's just a cover. So phew. But FM Only the Strong Survive. This is a 12-inch single or maxi single. On side 1, there is just one song. That's the title track, Only the Strong Survive, and that's a power ballad. Pretty standard power ballad. This is from '92, right? So standard 90s hard rock, hair metal. Although FM are more like just a rock band with hard rock leanings at this point in time. But a fairly standard hair metal hard rock ballad. I can live without it, to be honest, but the chorus is pretty good, pretty catchy. The lyrics are not cheesy for once, because at this point in time, power ballads were incredibly cheesy lyrics-wise. But I can live without it. Side B is more interesting. It has 2 songs on it. There is A Little Bit of Love, which is a fun, upbeat rock song. And the sort of the crown, the best part of this maxi single, is the last song, Primitive Touch, which is a groovy, catchy, great in my opinion, hard rock song with some cool riffage, and it's worth it. It's absolutely worth it, waiting for it, you know. So yeah, I can live without the title track. On side 2, a little bit of love. It's okay. Primitive Touch, a great hard rock song for my money. So that's FM Only the Strong Survive, a maxi single. And now let's turn to the real Queen of Canada, Lee Aaron. This is her debut album, the Lee Aaron Project. Originally from 1982, this is the 1984 reissue on Roadrunner. And they've tried to kind of metal it up a bit, image-wise. I mean, there's even like a picture of her on a motorcycle. Obviously, they're also trying to appeal to an audience of teenage boys, I think, like they did in the 80s. This album here is not bad, but it's not great either. I think it has some good songs on it, and it has a lot of okay songs. Night Riders on side A is, for my money, the best song on the album. And on side B, Should Have Known is also a pretty cool song. The rest of the songs they're fine, I think. On the last song on side A, I Like My Rock Hard, is very cheesy lyrics wise. And you know, they got, you know, innuendo, double entendres and all that stuff going on, and all of whatever subtlety there might have been to it just goes out the window towards the end of the track, which more than anything sounds like the sexual fantasies of a teenage boy in the 80s who also happens to like rock music. Very cheesy when you kind of look back at it, to be honest. Almost cringe, but there you go. But Shoulda Known, great song. Night Riders, also great song. And her performance, Lee Aaron's singing is great throughout. She's a great rock vocalist. She has a great rock and roll voice. Not so much so operatic or technically refined or anything, but great rock and roll belting voice. But not the best album in the world. And the reissue here has a previously unreleased bonus track in the form of Under the Stars, which is kind of a power ballad. It's the last one on side B. It says that it was recorded live at the El Mocambo. And if El Mocambo is the code word for Lee Aaron's bathroom, then yeah, maybe, because the vocals sound like they were recorded in a bathroom. They have this sort of reverby, echoey feel to it, and that's, again, it's because it's a live recording, and it sounds a bit like, you know, kind of almost like a bootleg quality on the vocals, not on the instrumental part, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, Lee Aaron project, not a bad album, but not the greatest album in the world. Great vocal performance by Lee Aaron, but she's kind of held back by lots of 80s cheese. It's from 82, so, you know, very early for 80s cheese. And it's also quite clear that this is not really like a band effort. And you can even, I mean, you probably can't see that, but on here you have like lists of musicians for each song, and they're pretty much different for each song. So it's not like a sort of a tightly knit band, and I think you can hear that. But as I said, an okay album, but not the greatest album in the world. This one here from 85, Call of the Wild, much better. But of course, I think there's like 1 or 2 albums between this one and the one I just showed you, the debut. There's certainly the Queen of Metal, or Metal Queen, I don't remember, from 84. But this one, Call of the Wild, much better. Some really good songs on this one. I mean, it's also hard rock and sort of your typical 80s feel-good party metal. Judas Priest's Turbo comes to mind, and that's not an insult, because I know a lot of people are probably going to want to throw tomatoes at me, but I really like Turbo, so it's actually a compliment when I compare an album to Turbo. But that's sort of the vibe I get. It starts out really strong with Rock Me All Over, Running from the Fire, and Champion. Rock Me All Over is a straight up 80s metal song. Running from the Fire and Champion are more in the vein of of 80s hard rock, you know, keyboard burst fueled hard rock. Then there's a ballad, Barely Holding On. It's an okay power ballad, but again, it's a ballad that, you know, I can live without, so that sort of brings the energy level down a bit. There's also a cover version after that of Kix's Burning Love. I could also live without that. But the 3 first songs on side 1 or side A are great. Side B is actually very good all the way through. Solid song after solid song. The only sort of song that brings it down a tad is the closing song, Hot to Be Rocked, but it's still okay. So this one is a much better album than the debut album. This one has lots of great, in my opinion, guitar work, lots of twin lead guitars and harmony guitars, which I have a weak spot for. And Lee Aaron's vocal performance is also top notch on this one. So much greater album. I actually think if you want to get into Lee Aaron and check out her music, I would probably start with this one. and not the debut album. Anyways, that was a healthy dose of first impressions. I hope you enjoyed it. In any case, thanks for watching.